So now let's head to Algeria. Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2025. It begins tomorrow. 6 days until the 10th, organized by the African Union, the Afro-Exim Bank, and the Africa Free Trade, FCFTA Secretariat, Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Now, the fair will gather leaders, businesses, investors to boost trade and integration under the AFCFTA. Now, key features include country pavilions, investment forums, conferences with a spotlight on youth, women, and the creative sector. So that's, billions of dollars in deals are expected to be sealed and making the IATF 2025 a major driver of Africa's economic transformation. As expected, of course, Arise News doesn't miss a beat on such events. That's why we have joining us from Algiers, Arise business correspondent, Boason Omofaye. Of course, the host of this show, Boots on the ground. Boason, good to see you. Good evening. Can you tell us the key trade and investment opportunities that will be showcased at IATF? What do we expect?
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. You mentioned Arise never missed this. This is the 4th edition of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, and we've never missed the event every 2 years. Remember, it's biannual. So we've never missed this since it started back in Durban, South Africa, 8 years ago or so. So we've been part of this, a very new chapter, a new horizon, as it were, by the Afro-Exim Bank bringing the Intra-Africa Trade Fair under its umbrella and providing a platform. Remember again, the chairperson and the goodwill ambassador for the IATF is Nigerian-born former president Olusegun Obasanjo. So Nigeria is part of this since it started as an idea by the Afro-Exim Bank. But specifically to your question, we're expecting, according to numbers pushed out by the Intra-Africa Trade Fair itself, the IATF, thousands of, in double digits of delegates, folks are flying in from across Africa, from around the world, to be a part of this. We're at the international airport here in Algiers. The reception desk is just somewhere behind me, and then you've got a whole lot of folks welcoming, not just delegates who are journalists and those who will be speaking, but also other institutions. Remember, Afro-Exim Bank bring together other DFIs on the African continent to be part of the intra-Africa trade conversation. And of course, the African Continental Free Trade area, which is under the Secretary General of Wamkele Mene. This is one big outing for the exiting president of Afro-Exim Bank, Professor Benedict Orama. Of course, remember in Abuja just some weeks ago, a new leader for the Afro-Exim Bank was elected. So Dr. Orama will be stepping down after 10 years in the saddle. He's been able to grow the institution on a very strong basis. Remember, the earnings or the financial operations of the Afro-Exim Bank was released a few days ago. They've grown very well within the first 6 months of this year. First, can read up the numbers. But the non-performing loans, I mention, is now around 2.8% at very low level. They've been able to grow the loan book, as it were. Net interest income was also up. But as for the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, we're expecting at least about $44 billion in deals to be signed. Remember, the last edition of this trade fair was in Egypt 2 years ago. Remember, at least about 5 or 6 Nigerian companies, including banks, were part of the deal signing. Some subnationals were there. If you remember, in Egypt, I remember very well, I was there with the rest of our team at Arise News. Anambra State, the governor was there with other state governors from Nigeria in terms of signing deals. Then you talk about the session that is focused on subnational in Africa. That was also being headlined by a few Nigerian governors as well. So we expect to hear more from the team at the IATF Secretariat, beginning from tomorrow. The opening formalities will be at about 8:30 Nigerian time. That will be live streamed on Arise News channel. We can follow up with the rest of the week until the 10th here in Algiers. Back to you, Rotus.
Fantastic. Boason, thank you so much for the breakdown. Boason, look, everybody knows your promo. Trade, trade, trade. That has been the talk of the world, from the United States to China, Russia, and Africa. So I have to ask you, Boason, how will the forum advance the goals of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement here? How's it going to advance those goals?
Yeah, that's the most important question. Thank you, Rotus. If you remember, now we've got a whole trade bandwagon, the whole dislocation being thrown around by President Trump since he came into office earlier this year. Now you see Africa being overtures, economic diplomacy around Africa by Russia, India, China, and Japan, some of the biggest, and of course Brazil as well. You've seen the Nigerian president move around. You've seen the Kenyan president going to China looking for deals around infrastructure. You find Zimbabwe, Zambia, everyone is on the move. The Middle Eastern folks are also on the African continent. For example, Qatari's investment holdings is the $130 billion deal with Africa for 6 countries. Botswana, for example, will get about $12 billion of that deal in terms of infrastructure. So in terms of trade, now, one of the things we're hearing over the last few days is that India is now looking to see Africa as a destination to manufacture some of its products. Remember, look at Nigeria, for example. You have the motorbikes, you have the tricycles that are made by Tata Industries. In India, for example, you find a couple of others as well, electronics and other durable goods. So all of this will be what will be in focus at this particular summit. But more important, Rotus, aside from these big, deep pocket economies around the world, it's about us ourselves. It's about what are we producing on the African continent. So the exhibition will focus on innovation, on industrial manufacturing, on how to grow small and medium enterprises, women and youth in entrepreneurship across the continent. So we can't just talk about using Africa as a base for manufacturing automobile, repairing of aircrafts and what have you, from Morocco to Egypt to Uganda and elsewhere. But also we need to galvanize our own industrialization on the continent. And that is where some of the conversations will be around energy, infrastructure, road, rail, whether it's for the Simandou project, iron ore in West Africa, or you're talking about Transnet in South Africa, the Lobito corridor in central to southern part of the continent around Namibia, or you're talking about Ethiopia to the north, to the Horn of African corridor, or you're talking about Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda within the East African corridor. So Morocco toward the northern part of the continent, looking at Algiers as well. So the whole of Africa is being opened up as far as infrastructure is concerned. And Afreximbank is supporting this very massively to ensure that, yes, we can industrialize the continent, not just importing goods, but we also need to put boots on the ground. We need to run our factories. We need to use our population, youth, full energy in artificial intelligence. We need to bring in industrial manufacturing. We need to use our raw materials. We need to bring the SMEs to the table. So it's going to be a very robust conversation. Remember, this is going to be the first intra-Africa trade fair since President Trump came into office. So you expect a knowledge session. Apart from mechanics and entertainment, food and other things, you expect the knowledge sessions over the next 6-7 days to focus around how Africa will navigate the whole tariff war that is going on right now that President Trump has thrown. Remember, a number of African countries got slapped as well. Nigeria, a few others got 15%. South Africa is getting one of the highest tariff hits, 30%, and that is beginning to show up. So we need to have this conversation, not just around the global big economies, but how to catalyze our own investment in industrial manufacturing and trade on the African continent. Then we can trade, and do a lot more trade.
Fantastic. Wilson, you set me up well for the next question for you here. So that being said, with that setup that you've given us now, what would you say would be concrete outcomes from the summit? Whether it's, who knows, deals, partnerships, policy commitments. What do you think we should be expecting to come out of this?
I think the IATF is throwing out $44 billion in expected deals. I expect that to happen. We expect to see the deal is the thing. By the way, the last IATF 2 years ago in Egypt, I met with a woman who is the CEO of a steelmaking company out of Somalia, and she's running a very small company. She was at the Cairo's event to make some deals, as it were, with Afrexim Bank Inter-Africa Trade Fair. She's looking for a couple of millions of dollars to employ more to that steel company. That is part of the thing we're talking about. We expect a lot to happen. Dangote is here, for example. We're expecting big banks, the Hess Holdings, the big names in Nigeria and across the continent to be here. Some of the biggest banks, the Vista Bank, for example, will be here. And of course, you have some of the other folks in telecommunications, you have folks in durable goods in particular, and I'm going to keep emphasizing that. We need to produce goods that will help us industrialize on the African continent. Algeria, now let me speak a little bit to Algeria. In Egypt, Algeria made a very big exhibition 2 years ago, and I wasn't surprised that the name was announced as the next, as a host for the 2025 edition of it. So Algeria is one of the countries that is making a lot of big inroads as far as auto industrial manufacturing is concerned around the northern corridor of the continent, Algeria, Morocco, Egypt. Talk about these countries there. So we need these deals. We need to have this deal happen. We need networking. We need a partnership that can only happen. We need to showcase what we can. Remember, the international investors, the others will be here to see what Africa has to offer. We can discuss trade and just trading imported goods on the continent. We need to make our own shoes. We need to make our own furniture. We need to make bags. We need to make a lot of more goods with the resource that we have. So all of this will help on the continent to actually fast track the AFCFTA. And without that, we will just go nowhere. So over the next 7 days, we'll be live on the channel. We'll be talking to experts. We'll be doing interviews. We'll be covering some of the key sessions that will highlight what more Africa needs to get done. Remember also, Rotus, you also covered the international environment. September is very important. Interest rate decision is around the corner by the Fed in just about 2 weeks or so from now. So the issue of capital, inflation, exchange rate, all of that, interest rate, will be part of the conversation here, and how to mobilize capital, not just from outside, but also catalyze capital within the African continent to put into some of these trade deals that will go into industrial manufacturing, SMEs, women, youth-led entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity, all of that in one basket for this week. Rotus, back to you.
All right, senior business correspondent, Boason Omofaye. Look, we can't thank you enough for this breakdown. Thank you so much for giving us this update. We will look forward to so much more with your coverage and the rest of the Arise News team in Algiers at the IATF 2025. Thank you, Boason.